Hello to everybody in YouTube land. I hope you're doing well today. My name is Scarlett, and I'm an atheist and skeptic. A few weeks ago, I put out a community post asking what people wanted to hear about, and today I'm answering a couple of those queries. No dilly-dallying, let's just get right into it. The first one comes from the atheist codger, who asks, have you ever had any particularly disturbing exchanges with any of your fundamentalist students? I have, including one that still has me a little shaken 6 years after the fact. I'm so curious about that story. I really, really want to hear that story sometime. I don't have any stories on this, and I'm not sure I've had fundamentalist students. If I have, they were very quiet about it. I can't think of any students that seemed very eager to talk about religion at all. Sometimes we did have to discuss religion, and they seemed thoughtful about their discussions and interested, but nobody seemed particularly religious-y. Who knows why that is? So sorry, long answer to say I actually don't have any stories like this. Let's go to the second query. So this comes from Eric Riley, who asks, I'm interested in what you believe and why. Reacting to apologists is fun, but that's really explaining why you don't believe what they believe and pointing out when they are wrong, etc. And down to the last paragraph, what about you? What do you believe and why? Do you have a background in science? Do you have a theory of knowledge that you prefer? Do you only disbelieve in gods but maybe believe in other non-physical things, whatever those may be, and on, etc. So that's very interesting, and so that's what I'm going to talk about. Who doesn't like to talk about themselves? And I am no exception. So, as I say in my intro, I am an atheist and I'm a skeptic, and I've kind of put my channel around those two topics, but I haven't always been. I do have a video about my deconversion, which I think of as kind of a sloughing off of religion. You can go hear my comments on that and watch that video, but the short form is I really didn't see a reason to believe in Christianity anymore, and nothing ever called me back. I never had any experience that even slightly suggested a God was out there and wanted a relationship with me. However, it was a long road to becoming a skeptic. I don't believe in any angels, devils, supernatural, heaven, hell, power of crystals, some cosmic energy. I do like the idea of cosmic energy. I don't know why. It just kind of is appealing in some fundamental way, but I don't believe in one. I am tempted by the idea that we are in a simulation. My husband and I joke sometimes that we might not have made the right sacrifices to the simulators, or maybe there are libations that need to be poured out to the simulators. It's just kind of a fun thing. We don't have any notion that we're in a simulation. I don't believe in a soul or spirit. I like the metaphorical use of the word soul, like in music or literature. When I say that a piece of music fills my soul, what I really mean is it replenishes my well of goodwill, or it recharges my positive emotions, or makes me feel optimistic and good about life, as opposed to all the assholes and jerks out there who suck me dry. But I don't believe in a real soul or spirit. I think of that as a metaphorical use. There was a time when I was a teenager and into my early 20s, I did believe in the supernatural, and I vaguely held on to God belief. I'm not quite sure. I can't pinpoint the exact age where I said, I don't believe anymore. I'm not sure any of this was really clear in my mind. Just there's some other realm out there that I would call the supernatural. I thought ghosts might be real. I thought there might be a place that souls went. As you can imagine, nothing ever came of that. I never managed to astral project, so I abandoned all of those beliefs at some point. It all seems quite silly right now, but hey, no one can say I wasn't open-minded. I did try. But now I don't believe in any of that stuff. To me, I guess you would call me a materialist. We know that we have evidence, I should say, that the material world exists, and that's all we have evidence for. We don't have evidence that it doesn't exist. Like, what we feel is that we are in a material world. As for my background, I really didn't study science. Sure, in high school, math, biology, chemistry. In college, I did biology, geology, and geography. And geography wasn't mapping, it was an earth science, which overlapped geology, but more emphasis on weather systems and geographical features and less on types of rocks. I've had no physics. And keep in mind, all this education was back in the 80s, which may as well be the dark ages. It's amazing how much we've learned since then. I do like science. I like to read articles about discoveries, even though my knowledge is from very much a novice, very much somebody who doesn't practice science. Like, I like Scientific American and articles like that. My real background is all in language, literature, language pedagogy, and I completed a master's in Italian literature and a doctorate in French literature, and I have a lot of linguistics in that background as well. My grad school provided me a generalist background, which means I took classes and exams in all periods of literature from the Middle Ages to the present. And in case you don't know, when you study literature, you actually have to do deep dives into all the humanities and some of the social sciences. So I learned a lot about history, philosophy, psychology, sociology, and I did dips into the classics, especially Homeric epic and Greek plays. I bounced between medieval studies and modern studies to postmodern literature and wound up focusing on post-World War II women's fiction for my thesis. Then my early research was all Holocaust memoirs and fictionalized accounts of the Holocaust, which meant deep dives into history and psychology especially. My current research focuses a lot on crime fiction and detective novels, which I quite enjoy, and it's much better to imagine fictionalized dead bodies as opposed to the atrocities that happened during the Holocaust. And I love aesthetics. Nothing gets me quite as excited as talking about the history of literature as a cycle of classicism and romanticism. They're such good times, good times. Delight for me. So anyway, I have a keen interest in narratives and how we construct them, what the narratives achieve, how they fail, how authors are self-deceived about their own goals, how they obfuscate their known unsavory goals. Find all that very fascinating, how the text often lays out more than the author intended. And that's often why I look at what people say and examine very closely the language that they're using. All of that graduate study has led me to calling myself a skeptic. I think that I learned both in my undergrad and my graduate studies how to locate good sources, how to evaluate sources, and that kind of thing. And I feel like it also helped me get comfortable with the answer, I don't know, instead of making an answer up. And it's also been a long process of not identifying myself, my ego, if you will, with my knowledge, allowing for my understanding to change and to own up when I don't know something, change when new evidence comes. I think as humans, we like to think that, if I'm the first person to know something, then I deserve a lot of admiration. But, if it's just a hunch, if you just had an intuition without any understanding of why you thought that, it was just a guess, and there's no real glory in that. I think there's real glory into working hard for the knowledge you do have. For a while on this YouTube channel, I was calling myself a skeptic in progress because I feel like skepticism is a process. It's a method. It's not really an identity. But I also want to acknowledge that I'm always working at becoming the skeptic. It's never quite achieved. I could be fooled. I could mistake a false expert for a real one. I probably still have unexamined beliefs that just haven't come out and they just don't get in my way, so I don't know about them. Anyway, I dumped that skeptic in progress because a couple people found it confusing, and I was like, I'm not that attached to it. Fine, don't want to use that. But I do see skepticism, although I say skeptic, I don't see it so much as an identity as I see it as a tool that I use to look at knowledge. In terms of morality, I consider myself a humanist, and I find there are also tenets of yoga that align with that. And basically, what I mean to say is I want to center the human, that we are all that there is, that we know about, and we need to take care of things on earth. We're all that can do that. And in centering the human, I hold values that align with human flourishing, harm minimization. And I think to do that, we need to balance out needs of individuals with needs of communities and societies, because we don't exist as monads in a vacuum. We rely on each other for all kinds of things, even if those needs are mediated by money, like we can't do everything, we can't study everything, we can't know everything, so we rely on each other to help get these things done. Since my studies were in French with a big emphasis on the 20th century, I came across the writings of Camus, Sartre, and Beauvoir very early, and their ethical thoughts really appealed to me. It seemed natural to me to think of existentialism, that the universe is this cold and unfeeling thing. And it doesn't really distress me to think of it that way. Actually, I find it quite freeing. Beauvoir was actually one of the authors in my dissertation, and she talks a lot about this notion of a project, that we throw ourselves forward into the future, and that is the literal meaning of project, is to throw yourself forward. We throw ourselves forward through our engagement in meaningful work. And so that's something that I find very appealing. I'm a huge believer in individuals selecting what they want to do, how they want to spend their time here on Earth, as long as it's in the bounds of the avoidance of harm that is part of my humanism. I'm also a big fan of the writings of Montaigne, and he has an essay on moderation. So balance is something that I'm always aiming to achieve. Not giving too much emphasis in one area, make sure that all these different areas are balanced, balancing the values, if you will. So my skepticism plays into my morality in the following way. So I have my values, and I examine how my actions contribute to fulfilling or not those values. And I have lots of values. So human flourishing and harm minimization are two I've mentioned, but also intellectual endeavors, family, ethical treatment of animals, and a whole slew of others. So values that I think contribute to a good life for myself and the people that are around me. So I try to choose actions that align with something you're balancing, your one value against another. You have to come down somewhere. Not choosing is the same as choosing. You're just allowing the forward motion, the choice. The lack of choice can also be a kind of choice. So in terms of science, my application of skepticism goes into how do I choose where I put my belief, I guess. And I try to go for consensus. I try to recognize when scientists are talking about what is a true hypothesis, things that are being tested, things that are being explored, exciting new directions for the future of science, versus things that have been demonstrated to be reliable. I like meta-analyses and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I try to look for. Since I'm not a scientist, I do rely heavily on people to communicate what science is. And so what I try to do is I try to think of science as things that are possible, things that are potential models that look more true or less true, and not put any of my own identity into what may or may not be true in science. So I could be wrong if I say, oh, I read that this scientific discovery, just whatever you want to say. And somebody says, oh, well, that didn't go anywhere. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It didn't go anywhere. So I try to approach knowledge in that particular way. And in terms of theory of knowledge, it really is just down to trying to find sources that are the best sources. So there you go. That's a little bit of how I go about maneuvering in the world. So if you would ask me about what I think about science, I accept that evolution happened and continues happening. I don't quite understand all of the origin of the universe models. I've seen a few. I feel like I understand when I'm reading them, but at the end, I can't explain a lot of that stuff. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I believe very much in what modern medicine has demonstrated in the germ theory of disease. I think flat earthers are funny, and there are a bunch of other conspiracy theories that it amazes me that people believe those kinds of things. Conspiracy theories are a personal fascination of mine because I'm very fascinated with bad ideas and how people believe in bad ideas. But a lot of times, there's just nothing there. It's all suspicion and, well, you can't prove it didn't happen. And so that, to me, is a very bad way to go about establishing what is likely true. Show me evidence that something happened. You believe the earth is flat? produce a map, not just some generic thing, but a real map that I can use. Give me evidence. You think that the vaccines are bad? I need to see more evidence, not just suspicion, for example. Well, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for the queries on my community post. I really appreciate it. And if you have any comments, stick them down below. And while you're down there, you can like, subscribe, and do all the YouTube stuff. You're on YouTube, you know what to do. And hey, if you like what I do, you can buy me a coffee. The link is down in the description box below. See you in the next one. Bye for now.